folks, coming at you with another GM's Diary. So today I wanted to talk about just sitting back and letting your players play. I had a recent session where I did this. I had a fairly busy schedule in the couple weeks leading up to this game, and so I had a couple of things planned out. I knew there were a couple different jobs they could do in the city to earn some money as well as to help the city out, and then I knew kind of where they were going next and had a couple of optional encounters that they could run into along the way, like bandits and gnolls and stuff like that. But I didn't have it as planned out as previous sessions. Part of this was that I knew they were getting back from doing kind of a big story arc. They had gotten a lot of gold. They were going to have the opportunity to acquire a couple of magical items, and then I figured they might want to do some shopping while they were in town before heading off on the next adventure. So I knew there was going to be some stuff that it was just, I had the shops figured out for that town, but I was going to let my players kind of direct where things went. And I think this was one of my favorite sessions so far, just because my players did so much role play and it was fantastic. I was able to just sit back and watch and laugh and, you know, be involved whenever they talk to an NPC, but really just let the player characters interact. And I think it was a good point in the campaign. You know, the player characters had been on a couple of adventures together. They had started to really get to know each other. Group dynamics have been kind of solidifying a little bit, as well as I think the players had a better understanding of who their characters were. So at that point, they felt a little bit more comfortable jumping into the roleplay side. And like they went shopping for stuff. One of the characters, it turns out, has a crush on the other character and bought this robe for David, and David just was oblivious to the whole thing because he has a crush on an NPC, and part of his character quirk is that he focuses in on one thing and kind of becomes oblivious to other things, which is fantastic role-playing on the player's side. But it was so funny because the player that, because the character who had the crush went and talked to some of the other characters about, like, what should I do? What do you think? And that's kind of how they, like, oh, well, maybe buy something for him. And he went off and purchased this robe and just, it was oblivious. It was so cringy. Oh my gosh. One of the other players, Alyssa, just kind of, she needed a break for a second because it got a little too cringy for her. But I could have, you know, I could have pushed things along and sped through the shopping and sped through all of that, but that was really fun for my players, and it was really fun for me. So it didn't make sense for me to push things along, so I let us take our time. And we didn't get to some of the stuff I had planned, and that was fine. That I just had stuff in the bank for the next session. When I noticed other players starting to kind of get a little bored, or, you know, if they hadn't been in a scene, I'd kind of direct the attention back over to them and they, like, you know, what is Kara up to right now, or what is David doing, so that it was, we were spending time, we weren't spending too large of a chunk of time with one or two characters, but kind of bouncing between what everybody was doing. Going off of this, as I've gotten a little bit more comfortable GMing, I've gotten a little bit more comfortable improvising and doing a little less planning for my sessions. I usually have the encounters figured out, just because that is, there's a balance to that, you know, planning ahead. I don't want to throw something that's way too overpowered or way too easy at my characters, and that does require a little bit of planning. Now, I've seen a number of resources out there that can help you kind of plan encounters on the fly. That gives you the, like, okay, so many monsters of this level comparative to your player's level per player character, things like that, that can make it a little bit easier to plan on the fly. But most of what I do now, as my prep has been evolving, is plan out those encounters, any combat encounters or puzzles that they're going to run into, just because that I'm not great with puzzles to begin with, so I definitely need to plan that out in advance. And then coming up with the list of, like, who are the NPCs in this area, what are the shops, what is the town like, but then filling in all the details as we go and letting the players direct a little bit more of where things are going. And when I'm a player, I really do appreciate when the GM lets us play, lets us role play, and doesn't force us along, to be a little bit of a moderator to make sure that we don't spend too much time, and also be aware of like when is role play appropriate. Spending a long time role playing and talking and discussing while you're in a tavern or on a shopping trip or even on the road traveling. Those are great opportunities to have role play. But if you're in the middle of a dungeon and your characters start like having a deep conversation, that might be a time to, as a GM, like see if anybody notices the creature that snuck up on them because it's heard them having this 15-minute chat at normal volume and they're not being sneaky. I really enjoyed that session. It also gave me some fun things to pull on because I got to know the characters a little bit more beyond just their backstory, but who they are, how they interact. So I can use that to play off, kind of putting the characters in situations where they can play off each other, where there can be a little bit of inter-party conflict that then gets to be resolved, and resolving more in the role play side. Throughout that session, there were actually a lot less rolls. We did have a few small combat encounters, so that obviously had rolls. And there was a little bit of negotiation when they were getting items that I had people make persuasion rolls and persuasion checks and stuff like that. But when my players were role-playing together, I really don't think I had anyone roll anything. There might have been an insight check at some point just to see if somebody was telling the truth. But I really just let them role play it. And I really didn't pull them out of the role play to have them make those rolls, because I think that can sometimes, especially if we're really into a intense moment, character moment, saying, okay, go and make a charisma check or make a deception check, can pull you out of that character. So it is a little bit of judging. When do you jump in as the GM and say, okay, you are trying to tell a pretty big lie, so I'm going to have you make a deception check. But yeah, if somebody's just telling a small white lie, that might be the time that you go, okay, I'll just let them role play it out. And as long as they're acting in character, I'll let them go with it, and I won't have people do opposing checks. Kind of gauging what are the stakes? What are the stakes of making that roll? So have you had moments like I had this last session where you were able to just kind of sit back and let your players play out the role play? I'd love to hear stories about it down below. And players, do you enjoy that, or are you more of, you want to move on to the next thing? There is kind of all sorts of different kinds of people out there and different kinds of playing, and it is, as a GM, I think a lot of knowing your group well enough to know, are people going to get bored with role-playing this shopping session and so we'll just speed through this, or are people really going to enjoy getting to have those fun character interactions and stuff like that, and so we will take our time with it. It is a lot of just gauging the group and figuring out how to manage the pacing and the players. I want to give a special thanks to all of our patrons, especially Sean, Joan, Lainey, Arvie, and Bryce. If you're interested in becoming one of our patrons and getting some cool perks, you can go to patreon.com/rollforinitiative. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and share. We make videos every Tuesday and Thursday, but if you want to make sure you don't miss any videos, go ahead and subscribe, and you can also hit the bell if you want to be notified every time we post anything here on YouTube. Alright, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye! I wore a red shirt today, so you can't see quite how sunburned I am. Oh boy. That is a sunburn.